Nadir. Ambra was awakened at sunrise by Omiko and Quill's preparations for departure. She heard Quill downstairs, conversing quietly in Italian with the security guards who were still watching over the apartments. Lillian Lightstone was already at work, managing the rescheduling of her media conference. Ambra ventured into the dining room overlooking the Grand Canal and found Omiko sitting in an armchair by the window. She was warming herself by the fire, sipping espresso, and looking out over the city rooftops and the early morning canal traffic. "Is everything okay?" murmured Ambra. Omiko turned to Ambra with a weary gaze. "He does not believe me," lamented Omiko. "Who?" "My boss, Kaito. I have been telling him for years that Necro, the heir to the Nautolan throne, has been planning for over a decade to unleash a cataclysmic event on this entire planet. Kaito thinks this is a myth because, in spite of everything I have gathered on Necro, all I have as evidence are a few small pieces of intelligence. But I honestly believe it to be a real danger." "What sort of threat? He stole my mother's research. I thought that his use of it through misinformation made him dangerous." "That too. Propaganda is as much of a weapon. You'd think we'd be smarter by now, having seen this a few times in recent history," Omiko said with a wry smile. Ambra sat down in the chair across from Omiko. "What exactly do you think this Necro character is planning?" Omiko hesitated. "This is going to sound slightly crazy," she said. "Necro was building a tsunami-generating device. I don't know exactly what or how, but he intends to develop one that will cause massive events many times the size of any recorded so far. It will kill millions of people, destroy cities, cause global economic breakdown, and possibly the collapse of civilization." Ambra's skin prickled, her stomach turned, and her heart rate surged, her body reacting, though her mind did not believe it. "I found this in Piazza San Marco just after Necro dove into the lagoon," said Omiko, pulling the folded paper with the sketch of Nadir from her pocket. "How is this possible? Are you sure?" "I have access to classified records through my work with the TIA, and I have been able to piece together a picture of Nautolan culture over the years from small amounts of intelligence. Nautilans believe they are superior beings to Terrans who are fouling the planet. The Terrans take too much from the ocean, upsetting ecosystems and eroding Nautolan food supplies, fouling the ocean with pollution and plastic, changing the chemical composition of the ocean, causing mass loss of species, and so on. And they are right." "They are," said Ambra with a grimace. "But why flood the whole planet? Won't that make things even more difficult for them?" "It would, but only temporarily. There would be some Terran waste that could be a problem, but most systems would recover once Terrans are gone and their activities have ceased. Their surface-dwelling counterparts, the Ondans, don't want this at all, because they will wear the worst of the impact, and it would bring them close to collapse too." Ambra nodded, recalling Quill's story about the conflict between the Sotomaran tribes she first arrived in Atlantum. "And, of course, the Nautilans will have a lot more territory than they currently do," finished Omiko. "They have a planet that is three-quarters ocean now," exclaimed Ambra. "Much of the ocean's resources they need for food and other requirements are not actually in the depths, but closer to the surface, where they are increasingly in competition with Terran demand on those same resources," explained Omiko. "That limits their ability to secure their civilization's needs, especially when they cannot be exposed to the sun and have to go to great pains to conceal themselves from Terrans in this era of modern technology. It was easier for them 50, 100 years ago to move up and down the ocean and access anything they needed." Ambra felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for the Nautilans. Umiko caught the look on her face. "Exactly. They have reasons for doing what they are doing, as extreme and unacceptable as their intended course of action is to others. And Nefari will not consider coming forth, revealing Nautila, or engaging with the Terrans." "Why not? Surely cooperation with the Terrans, I mean us, is important to Nautilan survival." "The father of her children, Nazer, by all accounts a wise and wonderful man, was Terran. He was a one-time oceanographer and ex-Navy diver who left his original life years ago to marry a young Nautolan royal, Princess Nefaria. Naza was the love of her life, and she used her powers as regent to make him king rather than her consort so they could rule jointly. Because he was Terran, he could be in Terra with no adverse consequences. So once the Terran super trawlers, overfishing, and other impacts started to create serious problems, he set off on a mission to negotiate with them. Nefaria did not want him to go. He never returned. What happened to him? Let's just say the Terrans Naza encountered in his negotiations weren't open to the idea of sharing, said Amico. They did not recognise his authority as a regent of Nautila and saw him as a threat to their own activities. He did not make it back to Nautila, and though his death looked like it could have been an accident, there is evidence that points to the hand of vested Terran interests in his demise. No wonder she's bitter, said Umbra. Yes, this is a big part of her motivation for vengeance. It is understandable, but it seems grief has poisoned her mind beyond any possibility of reasoning with her. And so she went down this path of seeking to destroy everything Terran, and now Necro has the means to do it. But there's one thing missing from Necro's plan, an immense energy source to power his device, which he calls Nadir. And there is such a source on this planet. A Saturnian diamond, a sample collected by a space probe almost a decade ago. It was stolen from NASA about a year and a half ago, and no one knows what happened to it. If Necro knew, or had tracked it down, we wouldn't be here talking about this. But it's only a matter of time before he does. The colour drained from Umbra's face. So, it is possible, she croaked. I have also learned that Necro has accessed military archives in New Zealand. The records he viewed give an insight into what he is pursuing. Just before the end of the Second World War, the US and New Zealand governments were doing tests on whether they could create a weapon of mass destruction, a tsunami bomb. Umbra stared at Amico in horror. It was called Project SEAL, and under certain circumstances, they were able to generate a wave big enough to wipe out a coastal town. But they did not continue with the project because the Allies had developed a bigger weapon, the atomic bombs dropped on my country at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As Amico fell silent, Umbra gathered up her courage. I was in Thailand on holiday with my parents and brother when the Boxing Day tsunami hit, she whispered, as her fingers twisted the leather bracelet on her wrist. It was a sentence she had learned to utter without emotion many times over the years when an explanation was needed. Omiko's face contorted at her revelation. I was caught in it. Although I survived, I can't... The things I saw... Umbra's voice trailed off. Omiko clasped Umbra's hands in hers. I'm so sorry, she said, with tears in her eyes. She swallowed. I lost my father in the 2011 tsunami that hit Japan. He was in the area for work. My mother and I were in Tokyo. I watched on television as those waves washed over the land. I hoped he had survived, but in my heart I knew he was gone. He was never found. Umbra, now also in tears, was speechless. She squeezed Amiko's hands. Their eyes locked in an unspoken agreement. They would find Necro. They would prevent him from obtaining the Saturnian diamond. They would eliminate Necro if the opportunity arose. If Nadir existed, they would find a way to destroy it. Quill is taking me to one of his contacts, Lord Absu, said Amiko, wiping her eyes, to see if we can find and disable Nadir. We're leaving shortly. We met him on the way here. He still has my brother, Jevon. Quill said it was safe to leave him, but I want him released, so I'm going with you. I thought you were going to be gene edited during your mother's press conference here later today, said Amiko. Umbra sighed. I'd planned to, but if this Nadir thing is legit... Omiko gripped Umbra's arm. Listen to me. My director just conveyed information to me that gives me good reason to believe that a Saturnian diamond is located in, or will soon be headed to, a remote Norwegian island in the Arctic called Svalbard, she said. He just had a meeting with some intelligence agents involved in developing a simulator there, hidden behind a seed vault built into the snow and ice. They need a colossal power source to run the thing. One of those agents was shot and killed during the meeting. There are others aware of that simulator project who don't want it to become operational, and who will be after that diamond. Guess who my money is on? What? Then we must warn the people at this Svalbard simulator about Necro, whether there is a Saturnian diamond already there or not, cried Umbra. Nope. The priority is to determine whether Nadir exists, and, if it does, disable it if we can. And I will need Quill's help to pilot vessels to the ocean floor. If there is no Nadir, or we can disable it, then the diamond doesn't matter. Yeah, but if Nadir is real, what happens if Necro gets hold of the diamond before you locate Nadir? Omiko exhaled. Umbra, you're right, but we need to do both. You might be the only other person in the world who believes this to be a genuine threat. Your mother is about to leave to announce the Rapa Nui gene findings and demonstrate gene editing. Quill and I are about to leave in search of Nadir. There's a better than average chance that a Saturnian diamond is on its way to Svalbard as we speak, and Necro may be on the trail of it. Because of the nature and location of the work, and the associated security issues, there are no electronic communications in or out of the facility, so someone has to deliver the warning in person. What do you want to do? Umbra steeled herself. All three. But someone has to cover the Svalbard possibility. So how do I get to Norway? And how do I get inside this simulator project? I'll book you a flight from Marco Polo Airport to Oslo using my work credit card. You're in the EU, so between Italy and Norway you won't need a passport, said Amiko, rapidly tapping on her phone. Ask at reception for the printed ticket and flight schedule. When you get there, look for my contact who will be holding a sign bearing your name. The island of Svalbard falls outside the Schengen zone, so to avoid awkward questions at customs, passage there will be arranged by a high-speed watercraft. From there, a TIA contact by the name of Josting will meet you and take you to the Svalbard vault. Umbra nodded in agreement. She was secretly pleased that her assigned task was mostly on land. There was a call from Quill below. They stood up, shook hands. Umbra impulsively hugged Omiko. The Japanese agent gave her a grin and then disappeared down the stairs.